Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to Joey and Josh. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about officially a solved case. But just how official the solving of that case is something that I believe is very much up for debate. So without any further ado, in today's episode, we are going to be discussing the disappearance and the death of Jay Slater. Jay Dean Slater was born in Lancashire in April 2005 to parents Debbie and Warren, and despite his parents separating when he was younger, himself and his older brother Zach lived a fairly typical life of a British kid. Around that time, he was described by his family as one of a kind, one who was always the happiest person in the room, and others described him as a young, hard-working lad with a zest for life. At a glance, this was definitely true. Jay was into football. He played Sunday League from a child until he was around 17 years old. He went to college and had an apprenticeship in bricklaying, and in the years prior to his disappearance and subsequent death, Jay had developed a love for partying, attending various music festivals and events. In June 2024, Jay and a few friends took a trip to Tenerife in the Canary Islands. They did so to attend something called the NRG Festival, which was a 3 or 4 day festival consisting of different events around the Playa de las Americas area of southern Tenerife. The closing party to this festival was held at Papagayo nightclub, which lies at the end of Tenerife's busiest strip of bars, known to many as Veronica's. It's said that towards the end of the night, now actually into the early hours of the 17th June, Jay's friends Brad, Lucy and Brandon all told Jay that they wanted to leave. Jay decided against this and stayed at the festival. He was then said to have bumped into two men who were basically friends of friends. These men were called Ayub and Rocky. Jay is said to have asked Ayub if he could come back with him, as his friends had returned to their accommodation in Los Cristianos and Jay didn't have a key to get in. Ayub accepts Jay's request, telling him that he could sleep on the sofa. However, did let Jay know that the Airbnb that he was renting was not close by. It was in fact in the small town of Masca, over 20 miles away, as opposed to Jay's accommodation, which was literally less than 3 miles away. Ayub drove Jay and Rocky back to the Airbnb, and shortly after they arrived, the pair filmed their friend Rocky asleep in the car as they can be heard laughing.
Yeah.
2 bottles there. That one.
Headshot. It looks like someone done a hit.
Ayub said that he gave Jay a blanket, a cigarette, and that he told Jay there was an iPhone charger in Rocky's room. He was free to go to bed, but he only had a sofa for him to crash out on. He gave him a towel and some sheets, told him he was free to have a shower, and that he would drop him home in the morning. Now, instead of going to sleep, Jay spends a few hours in the Airbnb, and at 7:20 a.m, Jay posts a Snapchat of himself holding a cigarette, stood on the doorstep of the Airbnb. Now, a woman named Ophelia, the owner of a cafe outside the Airbnb, says that Jay Slater approaches her at 8 a.m. and asks what time the bus to Los Cristianos comes. She told him that it came at 10 a.m. and then recalls driving past him minutes later as Jay apparently power walked in the opposite direction, uphill, rather than back down towards his accommodation. At around 8:15 a.m, Jay's friend Lucy receives a call from Jay. Apparently, Jay's told Lucy that he has 1% battery on his iPhone, he had cut his leg on a cactus and was surrounded by vegetation. Basically, Jay was telling Lucy that he was lost. He also FaceTimed friend Brad, and before Jay's phone cut out, Brad calls telling Jay to come home and said felt like he heard Jay slipping on what sounded like gravel. This was the last time that Jay Slater was ever heard from. At 8:50 a.m, Jay Slater's mobile phone dies, and the last known location is thought to be close to a ravine in the rural Detano National Park. Jay's friend Lucy pretty much immediately reports him missing to the Tenerife police, and the search begins. Jay's parents, Debbie and Warren, as well as brother Zach, all fly out to the island to help the search, as well as many members of the public. Now, the internet goes into meltdown with conspiracy theories and rumours, some very untrue, and some that may well have turned out to be closer to the truth than we initially thought. And a GoFundMe account is set up, and at the time of recording, this GoFundMe has raised over £72,000. However, all of this is to no prevail, as almost a month after Jay Slater first went missing, his body and remains were found very close to where his phone last pinged. But what really happened to Jay Slater? Why did he end up where he did? And were some of the more sinister theories around this case actually true? Well, in today's episode, we are going to explore all of this.
I think this is one of the most unprecedented missing persons cases since the Madeleine McCann disappearance. And Madeleine McCann, when she went missing, they didn't even know what TikTok was. And I don't know if you know this, mate, but there are quite a lot of people on TikTok that are crime experts and people that solve these sort of things. How can you believe the reception around this, mate? I remember, can I tell you a funny one that I saw? It was actually a Facebook comment, right? It was all about Jay getting caught on a cactus and him potentially still being stuck when he was still missing and not found dead.
Yeah.
And that he would still just be there waiting for someone to be found on the edge of a cactus.
Like you get caught upside down on a cactus.
Yeah.
They literally had, what's that phone-in show? Is it The Right Stuff or something
Yes,
like
The Right
that?
Stuff, yeah.
And someone had phoned in saying, why doesn't someone just shout auto glass repair?
Yeah, because
And
Jay
then
would come back to that
if
straight
Jay
away.
was there, he would shout back auto glass replace.
Yeah, it is really weird. And there was footage that I saw as well of someone being like bundled into the back of a car. Like there's apparently cameras all around Tenerife, and they're looking at the landscape and it's very beautiful. And apparently there was this footage of someone getting bundled into a back of a boot. Which, by the way, in the footage you absolutely cannot see that.
Yeah, so you know that bit when you're, I don't think it was actually up Mount Teide, I think it was the other one, but when you go up the mountains in Tenerife, it's very, very rural. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think, you know,
You're seeing anything.
There are that much
Yeah.
CCTV. Obviously, on the strip of Playa de Los Americas, Veronica's, there'll be CCTV all over the gaff. And one of the main bits of CCTV footage that came out in the immediate aftermath was that of the alleged beach stabbing. Should we talk about that?
Oh god, yeah, quite a haunting moment this was actually, because there was as we will show the footage, but basically we hear screams, we hear someone saying, "I think someone's been stabbed," and they say Jay, don't they?
They say, but this is the thing.
We're not sure.
This is the thing with misinterpretation, right?
Yeah.
So I'll scroll through TikTok sometimes, and they'll basically show like popular music songs, and if they put another subtitle on it, all of a sudden
Yeah.
you hear what you're reading. So like there'll be a song and it will be, I don't know. You know that song?
I do.
If I could escape that.
And you know all the lyrics
And they
to that.
start putting other subtitles on it, and you start reading it, and you're like, oh, that's what it's saying there, but it's not, right? And what I'm saying is, you can make things sound like whatever you want them to sound like. So in the TikTok bit of footage that we saw, it sounded like a woman, who was apparently Lucy, shouting, Jay, and you said you wouldn't stab him and stuff like that. And I'm not going to deny that it could have somewhat sounded like that, but I can also deny that at the same time, if you put that subtitle on that, you can make a lot of things sound like a lot of things. Now, there was another one, wasn't there, of them, of footage from Papagayo, and apparently you can hear someone saying, you've dropped the bag, or you've lost the bag,
Yeah.
or something like that. Did you at the time, like when we were, because me and you were quite fascinated by this case.
Yeah.
Did you at the time actually sort of start to look at them and buy into them and read into them at all?
I think you have to be fair. Like the way that these TikToks go around, they are they are quite memorable, and they do stick in your mind. And also, like, there's so many theories going around, and I think what us humans do, we're addicted to the sort of the celebrity nature of this. We're addicted to the case, and also we're addicted to the fascination and the belief in which we can solve it as well. And so I think there were loads of people out there very innocently trying to help out on the case, and then I also do think there were some people maliciously trolling. You know, we saw the trolling that happened with his mum as well. You know, there were various other people that were being trolled left, right and centre. But you do want to believe that you could find this guy. And you remember the hysteria, it was over a month, wasn't it, where we were actively trying to find Jay, and people were out there trying to do it. And so absolutely you wanted to believe some of the footage, or you wanted to at least try and get the answers to it. That was the key thing, wasn't it?
And what ended up giving a bit of weight to some of the online, what, you know, some people dubbed conspiracy theories, what some people just dubbed theories around the case, was the probably, I would say, most prominent lead that was circulating on the internet was that this was a revenge attack. And it was a revenge attack for something that had taken place in the UK, and that Jay Slater had apparently stabbed someone. That's what we had first heard and whatnot. Actually, this was something that, again, at the start, pessimistic, almost dismissive of. But then we came to learn that Jay Slater was involved in quite a serious incident that went to court, went to trial, probably around a year and a half, maybe 2 years before this trip, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And you got to remember, when you are telling the story of this case, we see it through the eyes of the media, and we're seeing a young lad innocently going away for his first holiday, and you think him then therefore going missing is absolutely gutting. And you can understand why there are so many people that are paying towards the GoFundMe page and are really concerned about his whereabouts, really. But what we had learned was that Jay did have a darker past, and it was in 2021 that the incident that you're talking about happened, and he was involved really in quite a severe gang-led attack of a young lad called Tom Hilton. And what happened was that there were 8 young lads that basically attacked him. Started off with just using punches and kicks, but it led to something a lot more severe than that. So then there were golf clubs involved, and then we're talking about machetes and other weapons that were potentially involved in this attack. And it did actually end up going to court. So it was 2023 that it ended up going to court. The judge was giving his sentence and saying that this gang really were acting so criminally, so callously as well. And this guy had really severe injuries, and really they just left him to bleed out. Anything could have happened to him. Something really desperate could have happened to him, to be fair. And the judge remarked at the end of that the lads were just laughing and joking around in the trial, and that they weren't taking it seriously, which again is a testament to his character. And Jay ended up being one of these guys that was sentenced to it. So the fact that it was such a severe and worrying attack, and the fact really that they only got an 18-month community order.
Yeah, something
which was just,
along them lines.
and it was community service. They had to do 25 days of rehabilitation activities, and it was 150 hours of unpaid labour. That's a very, not a severe punishment at all for what really was involved. But that really was a turning point for me.
What should be said is the victim of that attack actually came out and put a I think a social media statement out, and I'm paraphrasing here because I haven't got it in front of me, but he said, "Look, can people stop spreading internet rumours regardless of the past? Someone's son's gone missing," and put this same sort of energy into finding them. So big respect to that lad who actually came out and did
huge
that
respect.
himself.
I don't think I would be have reacted in the same way, bearing in mind what had happened to him. So absolutely fair play to him. And really, this is what I mean though, the reaction and the case. You know what it's like when you retell these stories. You've got to remember how you first sort of came across it. And I saw him as a very innocent young lad that had gone on this holiday. But after this, you do start thinking, did he have more of a criminal past? Is there something more towards this story? Obviously, we'd heard whether it was a revenge killing, but then you also go, what did he have in his rucksack? What was he involved in something on Tenerife? So, yeah.
Well, there you go. You move us from a criminal past to a criminal present. And obviously, there was a moment in the case that, again, very pessimistic, almost dismissive when I first saw it, until an English private investigator flew out there and confirmed that this was actually a legitimate line of interest. And that was that Jay Slater had apparently sent a Snapchat to his friends claiming that he had stolen a watch off of someone on the Tenerife Strip. Now, Papagayo, the nightclub where the NRG Festival was commencing, is on the end of that Veronica's Strip, and Jay Slater's friends said when they were interviewed by the private investigator and by the police and whatnot that although they couldn't confirm it because they didn't see this happen or anything, Jay wasn't a liar. And in the Snapchat, obviously, he said that he had took someone's watch and he was going to sell it for 10 grand or something like that.
I think the watch is really important, to be fair, and I think we should stick a pin in that because I think that's something we should discuss slightly later in this video. But why don't we talk about the friends? Because I remember 2 of the friends very clearly, but you actually reminded me there was a third friend involved that basically didn't get any coverage. I don't remember seeing this person at all.
Yes, so the friends came under heavy scrutiny. Obviously, there was Lucy. She was the first friend that was kind of revealed. She actually did an interview, but had obviously said, I'm not having my face on camera. So she did her interview up in the mountains somewhere around the region of where Jay went missing in Masca, and she had her back to camera. This straight away was always going to point suspicion towards Lucy. It was always going to have people think that there's some sort of shady behaviour because they'd say, why doesn't this girl want to be seen? Maybe she's got a past, maybe she's got a background. Can you see that at all, or?
I think in these true crime cases, I think when something actually happens to you and you're a young girl, I don't think you can read too much into this. And I'll explain my reasoning why. I do think that there's an element of, there's a benefit of being confidential in these sort of things and having a conversation with a media organisation and not wanting to reveal your identity when you are a young girl. Bearing in mind, we've discussed this, all of the attention in the press that was around it. You know, think of all the TikTok conspiracy theories around
the internet
Lucy.
had her as an international drug kingpin.
Yeah, exactly. They did. And so I feel a lot of sympathy for her in that decision, to be fair. I don't mind it. But then also, like, do you think that the other theory that I have around this is, did she not want to be implicated in what she might have seen as being quite a criminal sort of like group act? Was she worried about, you know, he's stolen a watch, I don't know what else he's doing, what else was in the rucksack, for example, which we have to talk about as well. Was she worried about that from that perspective? So I think there are various sort of reasons why she wouldn't want her face to do. So I didn't look at this very suspiciously. Did you?
I did, yeah. I did look at it suspiciously because I thought that if your hands were completely clean, then you would probably not have a problem with your face being on camera. At the same time as that, the interview was conducted, I think, the day after the festival. I'm just going to put it straight here, and please don't, like, tune off the episode now because people will say, oh, you're throwing accusations about and whatever. These lot were all getting on it. Do you know what I mean? This ain't my first fucking barbecue, mate. You don't go to a fucking festival and you're not getting on the disco biscuits, yeah, or the MD or whatever, yeah. So these lot were all probably getting on it, yeah. Yeah. They're doing so until the early hours of the morning. Papagayo, the nightclub. I'll tell you who's been there way more than Jay Slater. Joey Knight, right? So Papagayo, listen. I know all these spots.
Can I just say before you go on, right? I love this case because I'm sitting across from someone who's the most qualified person to talk about this because Joey knows Tenerife like the back of his hand. And also, you're obsessed with this. You, at the time, it was all you were talking about was this case. So you're qualified to talk about it.
I think I was there, 2 weeks before? Been there a couple of times since. Like, I spent about fucking half the year out in Tenerife.
I'm surprised you're putting your face out, mate, because you might be involved.
Papagayo, right? It's been you know, now fingers the last place Jay Slater was seen. Papagayo does a lovely chicken burger.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. It does daytime food now. It's not just a nightclub. It's like a daytime thing as well.
Are we talking breaded chicken or are we talking
breaded
just
chicken? Breaded chicken burger.
Wow,
banging. But anyway, Lucy, I thought it was a little bit suspicious. At the same time, in my head, I'm thinking, well, you could be on a come down. You know what I mean? Your pupils could still be dilated. Maybe you don't look at your beds. You don't want to be put on camera. Maybe also you're thinking, well, this is going to blow over because, listen, right? You see the parents of children that go missing, they don't change their fucking bed sheets for 20 years in hope that they'll return home and whatnot.
Unless you're Kate McCann.
Unless you're Kate McCann and you wash cuddle cat. But what I'm saying is, in Lucy's head, she might be thinking, well, this is going to blow over really, like, quite quickly because he's going to be found.
Yeah.
So do I want my image forever out there? And then you might go, well, okay, it was a smart decision. But then what instantly sort of goes against that is the fact that Brad does an interview.
He does.
The second friend. And Brad is happy to have his face on camera to speak about his experience. Now, my initial feeling straight off the back after watching Brad's interview, and obviously again, you look online, you look on TikTok, you look on Instagram, and you'll see that the social media apps are going into frenzy. This man knows more than he knows and whatnot, and ultimately none of us know. But did I suspect Brad at all? I didn't really. Did you?
Why was he chuckling? Why was he smiling during that interview?
Awkward, young,
Yeah.
felt awkward on camera.
Yeah. It seemed like he was quite...
in his head, still probably thinking Jay's going to be found.
Yeah.
Like, you got to remember, listen, you got to remember, yeah, there's no smoke without fire, okay? Yeah? So if someone gets in trouble back home, like we know with Jay with the machete attack, and people will argue how involved he was in that, whether he was a bystander there or whether he was involved and whatnot. If someone gets in trouble back at home and whatnot, you probably hang around with a crowd that, you know, get up to, I don't want to call it mischief, but get up to no good at times, you know, and whatnot. And they're probably not that phased by the situation at that point. I think when these interviews took place and were conducted, I don't think the gang were as phased by it as obviously they would have been had those interviews taken place weeks later on, because I do truly believe that they didn't know what had happened to Jay and they did think that he'd be found.
Yeah, when you asked me the original question, was he involved? I don't think he was. The follow-up question that I'll send back to you is, do you think he did know more than he was leading on in those interviews? Do you think that he had more to say?
Yes, I do. I think both Jay...
I agree.
I think Jay, obviously himself, I think Lucy and I think Brad all definitely did know more than they were saying. And I think this was kind of confirmed when the well-known British private investigator that we said about, Mark Williams Thomas, flies out. He starts to investigate himself.
As a result of information we've received, we now know that Jay took certain actions whilst at the rental because he was clearly worried about his own safety, and this was shortly before he decided to leave.
So there you can see for yourself that Mark believes that Jay left the rental in fear.
We've been unable to validate this in terms of a reported theft. However, friends of Jay said he would not make this up, and the watch was subject of later conversation between the friends. Not long after arriving at the rental, Jay around 7 a.m. had contact with various friends via social media, both inside and outside the rental. And during these calls, various videos, chats were had and pictures sent, including the one he took on the doorstep that many of you will have seen. I am confident that that photograph on the doorstep is him.
But what about the two men that Jay were with? Well, these men were initially unknown and there were internet theories around who they were, a lot of which were wrong, by the way, but eventually Mark revealed their identities as Ayub Kasim and a man that is known and referred to as Rocky. So little's really known about Rocky, but it very quickly came out that Ayub had been involved in a county lines drug operation and was said to have flooded Wales with drugs. Now straight away you hear county lines drug operation, a man that's been to prison, you see Ayub's face and he instantly becomes suspect number one. Not by the police, but again by social media. Josh, can you see why he was put as the main suspect in the case in terms of from the public perception?
Young lad goes on a car journey very far away from where he's staying, then something happens, is really concerned about his wherewithal and what he's doing, leaves a house. The last person to see him alive usually has something to do with it. That last person to see him alive were Ayub and Rocky.
Incorrect.
Oh, go on
there
then.
You go.
Who was it?
If reports are true, the last person to see him alive was Ophelia,
Yes.
the owner of the cafe, who obviously saw him when she was driving and said that he was walking in the opposite direction. He was walking back up the mountain. And look, although social media instantly, said, right, Ayub is the man, he's done something to Jay, he's got a criminal past. There's different elements of crime. County lines, drugs and drug dealing and whatnot is very different to kidnap and violence and stuff like that, right? There are different crimes. As far as I know, Ayub didn't really have any violent crimes or anything like that. And the police who interviewed him were very happy with his statement, with his alibi, with his version of events that happened that night. They were in line with Ophelia's, who was obviously interviewed as well, being that she saw the both of them. She actually had to ask Rocky to move his car at one point so she could get her car out of the sort of area where they parked, because obviously the cafe was next door to it. However, Rocky was never interviewed. Only Ayub was. So Rocky wasn't interviewed, didn't give a statement.
When you say interviewed, do you mean interviewed by the police or by the media?
By the police.
Yeah. Okay.
And some would say that obviously from what the footage we saw earlier, Rocky was literally passed out asleep in the car. He came in, he went to bed straight away. By the time he wakes up,
He's gone.
Jay's gone.
Yeah.
So some would say, well, there's nothing to interview him about. Do you think it's a mistake on the police's behalf not to interview Rocky?
Well, a lot of people have criticised the police in terms of this investigation. Obviously, they made these two guys stay a little bit longer, didn't they? I think they were intending to travel back home. They stayed for an extra day or so, didn't they? They did all of their investigations. They were found, as you say, to have an alibi. It is weird that he wasn't interviewed. I agree with you. I think that's strange. But let's be honest, mate. They want a resolution to the story. If these guys were involved, this would be a very easy thing to just tie up, wouldn't it? It would be, they've taken a considerable amount of time with Jay. They were the last ones to really have spent, because, Ophelia just saw him in passing, really, didn't she? So that would be an easy case to solve and an easy one to put the blame on. So if they have ruled him out, it makes sense to not really worry about them. I don't know why. I understand with the criminal element why so many people were suspecting it. But if the police have ruled them out, then you've just got to go forward, haven't you?
Well, people are still very suspecting of Ayub. And obviously he's done multiple live streams, podcasts, things like that since. And the speculation and the suspicion, I would say, has somewhat lessened and in other areas grown massively.
I've set my stall out and I've kind of said I'm not sure whether he's a credible suspect. What about you? Where do you stand on it?
So for me, it's a weird one, right? Because obviously when you just see a face and, you've never heard him speak and whatnot, and all of the internet conspiracies are tying in, you really do become suspicious of someone. But as soon as I started to hear Ayub speak, as soon as I started to see some of these live streams, and the best one that I saw was actually on a really good podcast called The Central Club. I'll link that in the description. The interviewer, complete chance, right? They were in prison at the same time in Cardiff prison together.
They knew each other?
Right? They knew each other. They were in prison together in Cardiff prison.
Oh, wow.
And obviously the guy that does the Central Club, I don't know his name, but he's good podcaster, good interviewer. He has gone on, been really successful, done well for himself. He's got the Central Club, which is a big podcast. And when he saw Ayub, right, he realised, oh my God, that's Ayub from prison. I remember him, right? So he reached out to him, he gets him on the podcast. And I think for anyone who really, really wants a deep dive into the mind of Ayub and wants to formulate their own opinion, I'd recommend that you watch that. It's linked in the description. But there were a few bits in it that I kind of thought, right, okay, that's a little bit suspect. There were also other bits where I just thought, do you know what it is? I know people like Ayub, like I hang around with people like Ayub. And what Ayub is a man who understands the code of the road, right? If that makes sense, yeah. So what I'm saying is Ayub's not necessarily someone who I think is guilty and knows more than he's letting on. But at the same time, Ayub's someone that has obviously been questioned multiple times in his life by police, right? Listen, you never get caught on your first offence, yeah? So when he got caught and sent to prison for doing the county lines thing and doing the drug drug stuff, that wouldn't have been his first time. It wouldn't have been his first time arrested. It wouldn't have been his first time in situations where he's been interrogated. So in doing that, you sort of develop a hardened shell where you're quite used to sort of deflecting and stuff like that, certain questions and certain positions that you're put in. I think that Ayub does a lot of that in the interview. However, I don't think that that's an indication of guilt. I think that that's just a personification of the life that he's lived and the life that he leads. My gut instinct on Ayub is that he's all right. I think he's all right.
So you believe his story? Do you believe the sort of chronological nature of the story?
Yeah.
Like, do you believe what he actually said?
Yeah, I believe Ayub's story. I believe that they went back to the Airbnb. I believe that Ayub went to bed. I believe that he gave Jay Slater a sofa to sleep on and offered him a lift back in the morning when he had slept and stuff like that. I do believe it. I don't believe that Ayub is this secret bad person and that he's like sort of pulling the wool over my eyes.
What's the connection then between the two? Like, are they had a chance encounter, they met each other on the strip, they got on, they became friends, and then Jay just travels miles away to stay with them?
Well,
Do you know?
here is where it comes to the code of the road, which I just said about, yeah? Now, Ayub, I think it's an hour and 40-minute podcast, yeah? Mentions Lucy, he mentions Rocky, he mentions Brad. He never mentions Brandon. He always says, oh, my mate that I know Jay through, right? He never mentions Brandon's name. Now, being that the one out of all of these people barring Rocky that Ayub is closest to is Brandon, it's strange that he never mentions his name. And I can completely understand why there's a lot of suspicion around that. Because, yeah, all right, Brandon didn't go on ITV News and do a fucking interview. Brandon kept a low profile. But people knew that Jay was on holiday with Brandon. One of the most famous pictures of Jay was him sitting on a poolside with Brandon, or him in, I think it was a mango shop or something like that, on the day of the NRG Festival with Brandon. Brandon, apparently, and this is what just I've heard through the grapevine and whatnot, has family and connections out in Tenerife and stuff like that. So maybe Ayub knows Brandon, right? Maybe they know each other through, you know, some sort of shady business, something like that, which is completely unrelated to this. Do you know what I mean? Like, say for example, can I just say to you, yeah? Look, right? If I sold you a bag of weed, yeah, and then you went missing the next day, that don't mean because I've sold you a fucking bag of weed that I've killed you.
So you're saying something sinister might have been going on. They're less than reputable characters that are friendly with each other, but there isn't therefore a direct connection between that and the disappearance and therefore death.
I wouldn't word it like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, but I wouldn't word it like that. I wouldn't say something sinister was going on. I would say that let's not be naive here. These lot were at the NRG Festival, yeah? They're all getting beamed up.
Yeah. Paranoid.
Yeah, a bit of paranoia, stuff like that. And that's actually where this comes into it. But before I get onto it, they're at the NRG Festival. They're all probably taking drugs, things like that. You know, they're just in that world. By the way, Jay Slater was what, 19?
Yep.
I was doing the same thing when I was 19, probably younger, to be honest. I was doing the same thing. I was going to Ibiza and spending 14 days in a row taking pills and stuff like that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's where I'm from, it's normal.
Did you drive tens of miles away from your Airbnb with two random blokes that you just met?
I could tell you some stories, mate. You thought that was going to be a very straight up. No, I didn't do that. I could tell you some stories. Listen, I have hitchhiked my way back on that motorway in Tenerife before for an after party. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is, it is a bit suspect that he hasn't said Brandon's name. At the same time, you could counter that by going, well, Brandon clearly didn't sort of immerse himself in the case, wanted to keep out of it maybe, because he has family and connections in Tenerife. Maybe he doesn't want to be named and involved in the case to any extent because he spends a lot of time out there.
And also,
that
some people just don't really want to speak to the media.
Yeah.
Some people just like don't want to get involved. They'll speak to the police, do what they need to do, and have a normal private life.
But earlier on, you mentioned the watch.
Yes.
Right? And in the interview, Ayub says that he knows from his mate, which we know now is Brandon, that Jay was texting Brandon saying, what are these guys about? Are they all right? Can I trust them? In terms of Ayub and Rocky. Now that, for me, would suggest that Jay was slightly paranoid at that moment in time. And now, this what I'm about to show you amplifies that even more.
Around 8-ish, just before 8, I heard the buzzer. And then I could hear movement. Obviously, Jay's like woken up. But he didn't open the door. So I just like giggled to myself, like thinking, oh, he's fucking shitting it down there a bit. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Why didn't he open the door? Do you know what I'm saying? So I just ran downstairs and I was like, yo, G, and he went, oh, bro, that's fucking wigged my head out, that buzzer, you know?
So from watching that, it's quite clear that Ayub thinks he is a little bit paranoid. So why do you think it is? Why is he so worried?
Well, there you go. Again, this now comes back to the thing of the theory of the watch, the theory of did Jay think someone was after him? When he laughs and says, like, he's shitting himself and whatnot, that to me starts to make me think one of two things, right? It starts to make me think that something has happened that night, right? So there has been an altercation, maybe a watch has been stolen, and you can say, oh, well, hold on, no one reported a watch stolen. They don't. Listen,
Doesn't usually work like that.
Doesn't always work like that, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know I've had things stolen that I've never reported, and I know I've got them things back. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. The other side of it is I know so many times when me and my mates have been out raving and whatever, and we're back, and at 6 a.m, you know, fucking milkman puts a bit of milk on the doorstep and you start getting all fucking paranoid and you start skitzing out and whatever, and that's just an effect of a come down of drugs.
Or even just alcohol. You see people like they can't remember what they did the night before, they don't want to be involved in something that they are unsure of. Like that just happens when you're boozed up.
I get beer fear all the time, mate. I get anxiety. I'm like it all the time. What did I do last night? But these lot were definitely on the substances.
So do you think that was the reason why he then left the house? Do you think he's just generally paranoid?
Well, there's another clip,
Yeah.
and I'll show you it here, and this alludes to the fact that apparently Jay left with 2 knives.
Detective guy said, oh, he had 2 knives on him and he left scared. That's even more mental. Like, the guy had 2 knives on him. Like, he was in danger, let alone, like, do you know what I mean? But no one's saying nothing about that.
So if this private investigator is right, and he's left with 2 knives, which apparently, he's stolen these 2 knives from the Airbnb, which is concerning in itself. Is he that worried about his life, and what do you think actually happened?
So if it is true, he's in a state of paranoia.
Yeah.
My theory on what happened, right? And listen, don't come for me because it is what it is. Like, I'm just telling you what I reckon probably happened. I reckon there was probably an altercation that night. Maybe Jay took a watch off someone. Maybe Jay tried to. Maybe Jay got in an argument with someone. Maybe the watch is irrelevant. But for some reason, something has made Jay paranoid that night. Many people will point fingers at the ongoings within the apartment, Ayub and Rocky. However, I do just look back at that Snapchat footage of Ayub and Jay where they can be heard laughing at Rocky in the car and whatnot, and I just think that doesn't sound like 2 blokes who aren't sharing a sort of friendly dynamic, you know. It doesn't sound like 2 blokes who are suspicious of each other and there's some dark ongoings there. I think something's happened earlier on in the night and Jay has upset someone, and therefore I think that the reason he hasn't stuck around to wait for that 10 a.m. bus or gone back into the house when he knows that the bus isn't still coming for the best part of over an hour and a half is because he wants to get his skates on. He wants to get out of that area quickly because he believes that someone may be coming for him. Now, I'd back this up with the fact that Ophelia has told him that the bus comes, right? You know the direction the bus is travelling in. You also know that you don't walk up the mountain, you walk down the mountain. Because when you're in Playa de los Americas, when you're in Los Cristianos, you can see the two mountains, yeah? You can see the mountains from down there. He knows he's gone up there, yeah? You'd walk down, right? So, firstly, the fact he walks up. It doesn't take a genius. Why would you walk in the opposite direction to what you should be walking?
Honestly, I've never understood this. Is he hiding? I don't know. What is he thinking?
Well, for me, I'm thinking I'm going to walk in the opposite way to where someone could hypothetically be looking for me. Yeah? Then, why would you come off of the road?
Again, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it makes perfect sense, mate.
Why?
Because he's hiding.
He doesn't
if
want
you're
to be found
walking
on
along
the
the
road.
road,
Someone
if
will
someone's
seize you.
coming, if you feel
Yeah.
like, listen, potentially, this is what I'm saying the whole time. Potentially, no one was coming for Jay. He might have been in a state of paranoia. People get like that, especially people who are on drug come downs. And again, I'm only speculating here, but my speculation, I've seen the fucking videos. He was gurning his jaw off, mate. He was obviously on the beans that night. He was probably sniffing coke, I don't know, but he was doing some sort of substances that night. That can lead you into a state of paranoia. So potentially no one was coming for him, but potentially someone was coming for him. And that is why he went off road, and he felt like it would be way harder to detect him, and the cars that were going by wouldn't see him if he went off road and travelled down. And then that is where obviously Jay has met his fate. I believe that, you know, he's either fallen to his death trying to make his way down the mountain without being seen and without going back onto the road where he could have very easily walked down the mountain. Again, like, could have hitchhiked. That bus, it wouldn't have had one bus stop. It would have had bus stops along the way. So you could have started, bearing in mind it was a 10-hour walk or something back to Los Cristianos. You could have just started the walk. If you were that like, no, I'm not waiting around you, I'm getting on my way. You could have just started the walk, and about an hour and a half into your walk, that bus would have come past you. You could have got to the closest bus stop, and you'd have been able to read Los Cristianos, because I've seen the bus sign out there. So he was trying to go undetected, right? So he felt he had someone after him. That's what I reckon happened on the night. And then it raises the question as to what happened, why was he found, where he was found. And obviously the police released information, didn't they, saying that he was found with his belongings on him.
Yes.
But there's something very secretive from my point of view in this case, in terms of the police have never released the information as to what was found on him. Now, they said his belongings, but your belongings could be your man bag, it could be your wallet, it could be your clothing, or it could be a watch. It could be 2 knives. It could be his phone. It might not be his phone. Where his phone last pinged was apparently in a position where he would have had to have walked through like bushes and mangrove to be able to get inside that position, unless the coordinates of the Snapchat where the phone pinged was off. So I think that unless the police were to ever release what was found with Jay Slater when he fell into the ravine, if he did fall into the ravine, then we won't have any answers as to what state of mind he was in and why he went off road.
Yeah. Shall we talk about very quickly the theory that he was placed in the ravine?
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this now, I've seen the ravine itself. I think it would be incredibly difficult to carry someone and put them there. And also, like, there's various other theories in there about the decomposition of the body and the way it would have been, you know, it must have been lying there in the sun, and you know, because it's been a long time since they found him. Obviously, it took ages to find him, which is another thing that we've got to talk about as well. I just don't think there's any credibility in that. Do you? That his body was placed there?
I'm not too sure.
Really?
I'm not too sure. Because I was watching a lot of TikTokers at the time.
They're experts.
And they are experts. No, and like they were mentioning the fact that the search wasn't, after the first week or so, the search was vast in terms of there weren't still police searching the area, stuff like that. If you were a local, something like that, you could probably slip out there at night time and place a body there. One thing I would say is we were told that cadaver dogs were used in the case, and sniffer dogs and whatnot. Now, they're said to be able to smell up to, I think it's 15 feet under soil, 60 foot underwater, And the different, obviously the ravine, it's not like one simple drop, and we don't know where Jay or how far Jay fell, right? If he was to fall. Some of the drops can be as little as 20 foot, right? Which I'm not saying 20 foot wouldn't, couldn't kill you, but there's a chance you stay alive from falling 20 foot. Some of the drops were said to have been up to like 400 foot or something like that. So definitely, but you would imagine that if there was a rotting corpse, right, in the sun, maybe it was shaded in the ravine, but still Tenerife at that sort of time of year is hot, right? If there's a rotting corpse decaying, you would imagine that the sniffer dogs would have picked up on it, unless he was really, really deep in there. And obviously, you could say, he was airlifted out, which is fact. So
yeah, and you also just said that the search wasn't that thorough. So like a cadaver dog could have missed the area. Like yes, they can smell for a very long way away, but they might just not have been in that general area.
But then the concerning thing was like down the rapids, and I think it was Steve Tenerife or something like that. Certain TikTokers that were on the case at the time, they were so close to where the body was found. It was shown that like certain places they were in were so close to where the body was found. And I think like smell wise, I think you'd be able to smell something. I also think as well of like, you go down Brighton coast, right? You drop a chip on the floor, what happens immediately? Seagulls everywhere, right? If Jay Slater's decomposing body was in that ravine and it was, let's say, I don't know, 40 foot, 50 foot down, do you not think, like, when if you're found right by where the phone last pinged, and that's the most extensive area you searched, either one of two things has happened. The search was shit, or do you not think you would have seen, like, circling birds of prey or something like that? By the way, I'm no expert here.
What I would say on this, right, is if you've ever used the GPS function on a phone, you know that there are constant errors. Like, I use things like AirTags and, Find My on your iPhone, right? There's all this sort of thing. And Snapchat uses similar technology as well. It's often wrong. I've had friends on Snapchat that show they're in Lancashire and they're actually in London. Like, it's never truly 100% accurate. So I don't think the last ping of him is anywhere reliant on where he actually ended up. I think you've got to take that with a huge pinch of salt.
But then what you can't deny is that the ravine that he was found in, there were search parties and searchers, including TikTokers that searched, that were searching that ravine.
Yes.
There were. It's proven.
Yeah.
So that can't be denied. So whether the phone ping and whatnot, and it actually does correlate, by the way, I've checked this, whether the phone ping is near it or not, there were people that were searching around that ravine. There was one man, I think it was Chris Tenerife or something like that. I should find out the name. They'll put it up on the screen. He literally said like he thinks he could be in that ravine right there. So I think that, again, was he placed there? Did he fall? I don't know. I'd probably say he probably fell, I'd probably say that he probably fell to his death. Ultimately, right, the police know what possessions were found on him. So the police know whether there was a watch found on him, the police know whether there were knives found on him, and the police know whether his phone was found on him. Yeah? The police know that. It's my belief that the family also know that, right? So then it's a case of damage limitation, isn't it? Really? Do you know what I mean by
You don't want to expose him to have like stuff that he shouldn't have on him. Like, we haven't even talked about what was in the rucksack. Like, there's a lot of people saying that there was drugs found. Well, he had drugs in his rucksack.
But again, that's just
conjecture. This is TikTok. This is all of these theories are TikTok theories. But yes, I agree with you. If there were things around him, like 2 knives stolen from an Airbnb, you wouldn't want that coming out.
You wouldn't want that coming out. And you wouldn't want that coming out when you've raised the best part of, 75 odd grand?
Yeah, 72, yeah.
Whatever it was, yeah. When you've raised that on a GoFundMe page and, it's gone towards costs and it's gone towards the funeral and it's gone towards all these sort of things, I don't think you would want anything like, Josh, the damage is done. Yeah. The kid's dead.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And by the way, like, I feel sympathy for Jay Slater. I don't want to say anything that like incriminates anyone or anything like this. Like, loads of my mates watch my podcast and stuff like this. But like, Jay was there at the time of a machete attack. Okay, I got a load of mates that have been to prison and stuff and things and whatever. I've been arrested a few times. Do you know what I mean? Like, people do shit in their earlier years. I was getting in trouble when I was Jay Slater's age. Do you know what I mean? I'm 30 now. I'm 31 this year. But when I was a lot younger than Jay Slater, I got arrested for kicking a shop door in, a local shop door in, when I was like 7 years old, right? What I'm saying is, just because you've done stuff in your childhood years, everyone's been, where I'm from, everyone's been nicked, everyone's been arrested, everyone's had things happen. So do I think, oh no, you were a criminal, you were at a festival taking drugs, I've got no sympathy for you? No, not at all. I've got huge sympathy for him. At the end of the day, a mother has lost a son. And you look at the brother as well, seems like a really nice bloke and whatnot. And that's probably how Jay would have turned out. Maybe that's how he already was. If you listen to the people that he did his apprenticeship with, that he worked with and whatnot, he was a good lad. Like, you know what I mean? And sometimes good people can fall in with different crowds, can lead different paths and whatnot, or you're just involved in that scene, do you know what I mean? And you don't really know what you're doing at that time. So I feel sympathy for him. And I think that if the family were given indication, okay, look, this and that was found on him, we've done our thing, we've done our investigation, we're happy with it, it's up to you whether we reveal this or not. I think if I'm his mum and his dad, I think if they say, look, he was found with knives on him, he was found with a stolen watch on him, he was found with drugs on him, whatever, I think if I'm his mum or dad, I say, all right, can we keep that between us? Do you know what I mean? It
totally is fair. And also, like, if it is just a tragic accident that this guy was dehydrated, lost, you know, potentially on a come down and falls off a ravine, that's a very different story, isn't it? You know, from what a lot of other people want us to believe happened to him, that he was placed there, that someone pushed him. You know, the thing is that we all just want to know the truth of what actually happened. And I think what's the most difficult part of this case is we never truly will know what happened to Jay because of the circumstances around finding him and how long it was. It's a big shame. And I think that's what people yearn for.
My main thing to clarify is I think that people will want to know who knew more, because people did know more. And I think that all fingers have always been pointed at Ayub and Rocky. And I think that it's gone past the stage of pointing fingers, but I would say that Ayub is one of the least in the know about what happened to Jay out of any of his friends and acquaintances that he was in Tenerife with. That's my personal opinion. I think Ayub's one of the least in the know about what actually happened to him. I think that the people that spoke to Jay, i.e. Lucy, Brad, and probably Brandon, in the final, you know, moments of his life and whatnot, they're the ones that would know the most. And again, like I say, damage limitation, mate. I know it sounds brutal and it makes me sound harsh, but once someone's dead, they're dead, and it's just like, okay, let's remember the good about someone rather than the bad. So it's a tragic circumstance for the family and whatnot, you know. I remember being that age, and you'd have probably expected that you either go one way or the other. And when I look at like my group of friends, some of the best-hearted people in the world I know have spent years in jail. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I mean that literally. Like, my best mate got stabbed in the face, but he's one of the kindest people I know. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think that when you're brought up in certain environments in a certain world and whatnot, these things happen. It's not a true indication on what sort of person you are. So I feel sympathy for everyone involved, but at the same time, play with fire. Sometimes you get your hands burnt. So there'll be people that look at it in different ways. Either way, I think we've done this just about enough justice covering this case, don't you?
I think we absolutely have. And what I would say, if you liked this video and you enjoyed this case, I would very strongly recommend you check out the Mitchell Quay video that we did. We'll link that afterwards as well, because I think that's a very, very good place a case actually, I should say, and also was covered all over the BBC. There were loads of different videos and media reports off the back of that. And I think that's a very interesting video to watch if they haven't already. But yes, I hope you really enjoyed this Jay Slater case.
And by the way, just quickly before we go, if you've made it to the end of the video, you obviously enjoyed the content. I'm sure you must have done. We are offering exclusive memberships for the channel. That means that you can pay a very small monthly fee, and what you will get for that membership is you will get the videos that are being put out on a Sunday around midday up to 48 hours. Some of them have gone up to 72 hours before, so you'll always get them released before the initial release. And as well as that, we will be doing a live stream once a week. We hold them at various different times, but we'll always keep you updated where myself and Josh communicate with the members of the channel. So thank you very much, because so many of you have already joined up. It helps us be able to bang out these videos for you. Let us know what cases you want to hear us talk about in the comment section below. I will see you all in the next one.